Hello guys, Captain's Log, August 24th, 2021. Now some people brought up in my previous videos when I started using the Captain's Log intro, why are you saying Captain's Log but you're not mentioning a star date? Well, the reason why I'm not doing a star date is because I'm not in space. I'll admit originally that it was because I just forgot to say star date, but after seeing some comments of people saying that, I actually agree, and I remember that when I did my Captain's Log video, I actually pointed that out, that Christian didn't understand what Captain's Log was. I get that you guys want this to be as accurate to Christian's Captain's Logs as can be, but I feel more comfortable not listing out the star date. So, on to today's video topic. We are going to be pondering what if. What if Christian never made Sonichu? Now, for some reason, people believe that if Christian never made Sonichu, he would be the Ultra Chad-chan. That he would be buff, that he would be employed, that he would be happy. And if you know Chris, you know that's not true. That's not going to happen just because he didn't make Sonichu. But we're going to humor this what if anyway. I've been hearing a lot of people talk about what if Christian never made Sonichu. And I know quite a bit about Christian, so I'm gonna throw my hat into the ring and try to answer this question. Just know I'm probably gonna skim over a lot of stuff, but I'm just naming off the main things that still would have happened and some of the what ifs at the end to what could have happened just because he didn't make Sonichu. So, first of all, this is like the most important one. Christian still would have had autism. He still would have had all the issues that comes with autism. He would still be extremely gullible. He would still be a man-child. That's gonna happen regardless. He can't get rid of his autism, and autism isn't to blame on Sonichu. He still would have believed in the bear conductor. Regardless, Christian still would have gone to that mall. He still would have believed that the bear conductor was some type of deity, and he still would have changed his name to Christian. So, him being Christian Weston Chandler was unpreventable. Sonichu didn't cause that. He still would have had a recolor. Even without Sonichu, and a character that predates Sonichu is Bionic. Bionic is Sonic's long-lost twin brother, so Christian still would have made Bionic regardless if Sonichu existed or not. So he still would have had a Sonic recolor. Christian still would have had ton of Pokemon OCs. Yes, Christian got into Pokemon before he made Sonichu. Christian was into Pokemon for quite a bit before he decided to make Sonichu. And he already had his wall of originals before Sonichu even existed. So the wall of originals still would have existed, Pokemon OCs would have still existed, and his Sonic OCs would still exist. So not much is changing so far. He still would have wore polo shirts. His shirt designs and his shirt choices were not impacted by Sonichu at all. Christian still would have wore the same outfits because he still would have gone to the same Goodwill to get them. So Christian would still be dressing the same regardless. He still would have called himself Ricardo. Christian would have still took Spanish class regardless and still would have picked up the name Ricardo and wanted it to be his real name. Sonichu had no impact on him wanting to be called Ricardo. Christian still would have been fired from Wendy's. Christian worked at Wendy's without making Sonichu, and got fired from Wendy's with no involvement from Sonichu. So he still would have done the Donald Duck voice, and he still would have scared a child regardless if he made Sonichu or not. He still would have went on his sweetheart search. Christian started the sweetheart search after he made Sonichu. But Sonichu did not impact the sweetheart search. None of the rules involved Sonichu. Sonichu was not the inspiration for the sweetheart search. Christian still would have been lonely. He still would have wanted a girl. He still would have had the gal pals back in high school, regardless of Sonichu or not. So the love quest was unpreventable, and it would have happened regardless. He still would have had his run-ins with security. If he starts the sweetheart search, he will still have run-ins with the cops and the security guards of the places that he's loitering at. That is also unpreventable, and Sonichu did not impact it. The only thing I can say that wouldn't have happened is, when he confronted them, he wouldn't have brought up Sonichu, and he might have not done the Kamehameha, but the Kamehameha still might have existed regardless of Sonichu or not. but he wouldn't have pretended like Sonichu was there. Maybe Bionic would have been there, but who knows? We can't really guarantee what would have been going through Chris's head at the time without Sonichu. Patty still would have died at the same time. Patty was an old dog. Patty died of old age. Patty was not trolled to death. Patty was not killed because of Sonichu. So Christian still would have lost his dog regardless, and still would have reacted in a similar way regardless of if he had run in with the trolls or not. He still would have been banned from the gameplays. Now this one's going to be kind of controversial because I know a lot of the trolling did play into Christian getting mad enough to get banned from the gameplays, but I think regardless, Michael Snyder wanted to ban Chris, and he would have found any reason to ban Chris, and Christian eventually would have fucked up again that would have made him get banned regardless. It doesn't matter if Sonichu existed or not. If Christian had the opportunity, he'd find a way to fuck it up and he'd still get banned because Michael Snyder wanted a reason to ban Chris and found it. Bob still would have died at the same time. Bob's death had nothing to do with Sonichu. Bob's death is partially, according to Chris, as a result of the trolls. I don't believe that. Bob ate fast food all the time. Bob had a weak body, Bob had a weak heart, and Bob died of old age because of that. I think that he still would have been bit by insects and still would have needed to go to the hospital, and he still would have had a weak heart regardless. It might have been caused because he had a fight with Barbara, it might have been caused because he had a fight with Christian, who knows? There's endless possibilities, but regardless, Bob still would have ended up in the hospital, and he still would have died. Maybe it'd be a year before, maybe it'd be a year after, who knows? It's mainly Bob's lifestyle that caused his death, not trolls. So at the end of this, we can say that all of Christian's childhood still would have been the same. His childhood had nothing to do with Sonichu, so he still would have won the sweepstakes, he still would have been entitled, he still would have been a mute, he still would have had all the struggles that he had as a child. Almost all of his high school life still would have been the same. That's because most of his high school life had nothing to do with Sonichu. He didn't make Sonichu up until the end, so all the high school struggles still would have been the same. He would still be an adult child who plays with toys. Christian would have still played with Legos regardless if he made Sonichu. Christian still would have been collecting toys regardless of Sonichu. He just wouldn't be making custom toys of Sonichu. But he already had a Bionic custom toy, so like I was saying, Bionic had a good chance of becoming Sonichu. Christian still would be on welfare. Christian got his tugboat because he graduated college and didn't know what to do with his life. I don't think that Sonichu would have impacted that too drastically. I think Christian still would have been directionless because of his upbringing, and he still would have chose to not have a job, and he still would have chose to go on welfare. Christian's house would have still burnt. Like I said, Bob would still die regardless. The fire wasn't caused by Sonichu, the fire was caused by Chris's own ignorance. He still would have plugged the coffee maker into the wall, and the door still would have rammed into it, causing the house fire. Christian would still be in debt. Regardless of Sonichu, Christian still doesn't know how to spend his money. Christian still wastes his money. Christian still stole money from Barb most of his life. So regardless of what happens with Sonichu, Chris still would have been in debt. Probably worse debt because there was no trolls to bail him out of it. He might have lost the house even sooner. Christian might have not been trolled online. Now, I'm not going to guarantee that Christian wouldn't be trolled at all. Like I was saying before, he was still a weirdo. He still creeped people out. And he was still very eccentric. There's still a good chance that people might have chose to document him. But without the catch of Sonichu, I doubt it would have been as big of a deal as it was. I think it's because of Sonichu and the Sonichu medallion and the Sonichu comics and the Sonichu legends that Christian became the person he is online today. So I don't think there would have been trolling, and if there was trolling, it would have been more secluded and never would have blew up as big as it is today. Christian might have made stories about Bionic. Now, there's a good possibility that Sonichu was inevitable. That even if Christian wouldn't have mixed a Sonic and a Pikachu together, he still would have made comics about a Sonic OC. There's good chances that Christian would have just made Bionic stories and made more supporting characters that are knockoffs of Sonic characters for Bionic to hang out with, or hell, just a full-on Sonic story with Bionic in it. Christian was still creative, Christian still wanted to express himself, and Christian still wanted to do comic books. So I think he might have made Bionic stories, and Bionic might have been his Sonichu, but there's no way to guarantee that. Now this one's a big one, and it's one people have asked questions about. Would he still be friends with Megan? I think that him and Megan's relationship would be strained, and that Megan wouldn't really like him too much. But I do think that Megan would still associate with Christian. I think that without She Came for Quick, Chris would have been, like, annoying Megan, but Megan wouldn't have a reason to fully get rid of him. I think she would tolerate him and just accept that he's a weirdo and try to help him. I don't think Megan would have completely ditched him unless he tried to sexually assault her, which I'm not going to rule that out now. He might have not become trans. Now, I did a whole video on this talking about Christian and his gender and sexuality. If you want to know more about it, go there. I get that with any normal person, you would say that they were born trans. They were born with gender dysphoria. They were always going to be trans regardless. But Christian is someone who was white knighted and trolled into becoming trans. He was given these identities by people who wanted to fuck with him or people who wanted to control him. So without these people in his life, I doubt he would have came to that realization on his own. I think he still would have cross-dressed regardless, and I think he still would have been a cross-dresser, but I don't think that he would have called himself trans without the interactions of trolls and white knights. And finally, this is the big question. This is the thing that everyone is wondering. Would Christian still fuck Barb? My answer to this is probably. Christian was going to be desperate anyway, and without the connections of trolls, I don't know if Christian would have been able to find a prostitute. Bob still would have died anyway, and Christian, if he's desperate enough to fuck his mom now, he might have been desperate enough to fuck his mom then. And as you guys can see, a lot of Christian's tragic life is unpreventable. A lot of the things that made Christian Chris still would have happened regardless if he made Sonichu. Would Sonichu have prevented trolling? Yeah, if he didn't make Sonichu, he probably wouldn't have been fucked with as much. But there's still just as big of a chance of him turning bionic into Sonichu anyway, and then still getting fucked with. So at the end of the day, I'd say Christian's life is a mess. But that's because Christian is a mess. I don't think getting rid of Sonichu would fix anything. I think Christian would still be Chris. We'd have few differences, if any. So, hopefully you guys got your question answered today. Hopefully you guys like this hypothetical. And hopefully you guys have a good rest of your day. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you really like this video, then share it. And if you want to see more videos like this, then subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and bye.